I just thought I'd pop on today to talk, I'll try and be quick, about fabrics I use. I've had quite a few questions lately about what kind of fabrics I use, and it was the most recent question was in regard to these patchwork journals I've been doing. A few people have asked me what kind of fabrics I've been using. I've got fabric stacks on the front of them all. I've got little fabric tabs on the front, and I've made fabric wraps to wrap them all. This is my most recent question. They've all got bits of fabric on them, but it sort of really pertained to any of the work I do. So these stitcheries I've been doing recently, and one of the biggest questions I get is, how do I get the frayed edges? And that's really one of the easiest things to do. They've all got some kind of frayed edge because I like that look. I've been asked what kinds of fabrics I use. I mean, I'll go back, look, all of my work, all of my journals they've all got fabrics. And you will notice that a lot of my fabrics repeat. So I've got, for example, this orange lace linen in this one. I've got the same fabric in a different colour in this one. I've got the same fabric in a different colour in this one. And it's just a piece. That particular one was an old tablecloth. It was damaged. I picked it up at a second-hand shop. It had stains on it, and I dyed it. A lot of these fabrics, there's quilting fabrics, there's sari silks, there's, I might use, and again, they've all got similar fabrics in them. We've got quilting fabrics. This bit's just calico that I've hand painted. Sari silks. This is a bit of that linen with the crocheted edge again. More of that. There's that crocheted edge, the linen. This is an old piece of, a heavy piece of cotton fabric that I've dyed. This is some quilting fabric. This is an old piece of, like a vintage piece of bark cloth. Vintage embroidered fabric from a sari, I think. They're all just bits, and a piece of torn embroidered ribbon. Piece of ribbon, another piece. It's all, this would have been from a dress, an old dress that was, or a blouse that was damaged. I don't cut things up unless they're damaged. But a lot of the things that I use, there's a piece of denim from an old pair of jeans. Here's a piece of linen from a tablecloth. A real vintage piece of fabric here. I think that was a piece of curtains from the 50s. This is a piece of vintage sheeting that I've dyed in indigo. There's all different kinds of fabrics in my work. This one's the same. This is, you can clearly see here, this is an embroidered doily. I use a lot of doilies and linen in my work. These are quilting fabrics. This is a piece of linen. That's the selvage. I thought it was too good to throw out, so I've used the selvage from a piece of linen fabric that I had. That's the quilting fabric. That's the linen with the selvage. There's all kinds of different fabrics in here. Quilting cottons, old linens. This was, I don't know what that was, some sort of packing, that was in some sort of packing fabric. There's muslin, old linens again. That's a piece of denim. You know, all sorts of things. But I use, that's old sheeting that I've painted. All sorts of fabrics in my work. Tuck that in there. This one's the same. It's a little zine. It's got a piece of quilting fabric on there. Any fabric inside? I can't see any. There's a piece of fabric, piece of quilting fabric. I save a lot of fabrics. I save a lot of offcuts because, you know, in something like this you can stick your little offcuts, your little scrappy bits in. This is this journal. This piece here on the top is, you can see the edge here. So can you see the edge is, it's a bit hard to see. But here there's a scalloped edge with a hem, with a turned edge, and some, I can't remember what that's called. This was an old tablecloth that I dyed, and I'm using that part as a tie on it. This piece of coloured fabric here is an old sheet, a vintage actual cotton sheet, and I've just painted it. Piece of vintage silk here. This is vintage silk. This is quilting cotton. This bit here, this funny brown fabric, is this cotton. Now this, there's not much of it left. I love this. This is one of my favourite bits of fabric. Now this fabric was nailed onto an old vintage chair that my father was doing up, and it was on top of the padded bit with the springs, then the padding, then there was a layer of this, and then the cover, the seat cover, so the tapestry or whatever it was that had covered it. And I just love this piece of fabric. It's very delicate, so it tears very easily. You can see here it's pretty well disintegrated. I don't have to put much effort into that at all, but I've been using that in a lot of my work because I love it. It's a beautiful piece of fabric. It's got a lot of character. This is, the spine is an old pair of jeans that I had that fell apart, so I've stitched that in. The lining, this again is a piece of that actual cotton that I hand dyed. I didn't notice that mark there before. Again, all bits of fabric. This pocket was it was a pouch, and the pouch had some Battenberg on the front, and I took the Battenberg off to use for something else, and I was left with this insert zipper. So I've recycled it into a pocket on the inside of this journal. So I try to use what I can. I try to think outside the square and think of what I can upcycle and reuse and whatnot. This is another little journal I've done. Now most of this wrap was pieces, all these pieces of fabric came out of an old chaise lounge, and this is what was used to stuff the lounge with. And I salvaged as many of the bigger pieces as I could. A lot of it was very fine fabrics, like it looked to me like it had all been put into a big machine and just chewed up. but the lounge was, we believe, made in the early 1900s, and these fabrics came out of there. So I salvaged the biggest pieces I could find and I washed them all, and I've used some to make this wrap, and it's the same as this little mini journal. I've used the fabrics in this journal. They've all come, most of them have come out of that lounge. So think outside the square. Think about what you can use out of the ordinary. I mean, look, there's a piece of ribbon there, embroidered ribbon. There's a piece of lace that I've tacked in there. I mean, these didn't come out of the lounge, but all these frayed pieces did. All this worn fabric, they've all come out of that lounge. That's a piece of silk ribbon, and I've done some needle lace edging on there. Again, these are all out of the lounge, and I've just done some stitching on it. So I don't use any specific fabrics. You know, I was asked, what fabric do you use? Is it a type of fabric? No, it's not. It's all different kinds of fabric. All different kinds of fabric, all different textures, different, you know, if it's not what I want, I make it what I want. I dye it, I change it, I reuse it somehow. I make it into what I want it to be. That one goes that way, so that one's got to go that way. So a lot of the fabrics I've got here to show you I've dyed or painted. Not all of them, but this is something I've dyed myself. This was a piece of white quilting cotton. This is a piece of flannelette. That was white flannelette. I like this because it's tactile. It's nice to stitch onto things. It's nice and soft. A lot of these are just bits of cotton that I've bought second hand out of a bin. This was a white, just a white quilting cotton with silver glitter on one side, and I've dyed it all different colours. That was out of a recycling shop. So I bought a big bucket full for $1 or something, all different fabrics. This is a heavier fabric, almost a linen. This is a damask, what's left of a damask napkin, and I've dyed that. I've used bits of that. These are quilting cottons. This is a piece of fabric, again, cotton that had silver checkers on the back, and I've painted it on the other side. So they're all just, well, most of them are bits of fabrics that I've dyed, coloured. These are all cotton fabrics I've dyed. A lot of these are the vintage Actal sheeting because it's such a great quality fabric and it holds the colour really well. This is a piece of vintage silk that I've eco-dyed. Muslin, I like cotton muslin, I use it quite a bit, and here's a bit that I've dyed. So I use a lot of that in my work, especially for layering. But then we come back, look, quilting cottons. What are these? Batiks, jelly rolls. That's another bit of that damask napkin. I've dyed it a different colour. This is a piece of linen blend from Spotlight. I liked the fabric, so I bought a piece of that. Here's a piece of a doily, a linen doily. This would have been damaged in some way, so I've used that in my work. Again, I've just got, you know, I've hand dyed all these fabrics. These are bits of quilting cottons that I've been given or I've purchased or I've bought. I did work at a quilting store, so I did collect a lot. This one here, I love this piece of fabric. This was an old linen tea towel. And I kept repairing it. I was darning it and repairing it, and it just disintegrated, so I've ended up using that in my work. It's another piece of sheeting that I've coloured, painted. That was for a specific project, that's why it's a funny colour. Piece of linen again that I've dyed. So I've got all sorts of different things in here, all sorts of different linens. I love linen and cotton. Linen in particular is my favourite. This is a piece of heavy canvas. This is actually a painter's drop cloth from the hardware store. I've used that. Some of these bits, this bit in particular, you know those braided mats that you get? They're not sort of braided, they're very inexpensive. They used to be around years ago. I remember my great uncle and my grandparents had them, just the bits of fabric, and they're bound together in strips or spirals. I'd buy them and pull them apart and get the fabrics out of them. More linen, denim. Look, this is the inside of a pair of jeans pocket. You know, you save everything. There's everything you can use. This is another tea towel, bit of a tea towel, linen tea towel. Different bits of linen, different bits that I've painted. That was a piece of calico I painted. This is a lovely piece of cotton that I dyed in indigo. Another piece of fabric. It was sort of a linen blend, this one, with a silver sheen through it that I've painted. Again, painted. Like most of these I've dyed or painted. Bit of denim, laces, old laces, quilting cottons, more that I've painted, more painting. It's been dyed, you know, like more of that sheeting that I've painted, painted calico, painted sheeting, beautiful piece of dyed linen, more painted. So I guess the answer to what fabrics I use and why they're so unique is because a lot of them are used secondhand, recycled, and I dye them or paint them to get the colours and the textures that I want. This piece here was an old pillowcase. I bought at the secondhand shop for about 10 cents, 5 cents, and I liked that fabric, so I cut that up. These are leftover bits of quilts. It's still got the pellin, and I pull that apart and use the fabrics. A bit of quilting cotton, a bit of silk. Piece of, this is funny, this was I think this was from memory. This is fabric that was used to make dolls' faces, to make dolls with, and I've torn, these were scrap bits the doll maker was throwing out. She kept them all in a bag, and I've just dyed them all different colours. I've got all sorts of bits of that. This was like almost a khaki, pale khaki green netting, and I've dyed pieces of that all different colours. Here's that tablecloth again, and you'll see here I've dyed it all different colours, this bit of tablecloth. These are all bits of it. This was really damaged. I couldn't salvage it, so I've just dyed it, and this piece of tablecloth has been going for years in all sorts of projects. This was a piece of crochet that was given to me. It had a big bit torn off it. It was just missing when it was given to me, and I've dyed that. So even these little bits, I saved these little bits because you can use them on, for example, things like this. So you can put it on as your layers, or you can use it as your tab on your corner. There's so many things you can do with these little bits of fabric. Here's more of that tablecloth, all different colours. So that might give you a bit of an idea to start with of what I've used. This is this purple bit is the same as this bit here. It was a linen napkin. It started off that colour, then I dyed some of it purple. And here's another piece of that damask one. This was a white quilting cotton that I dyed. Piece of linen. This was in a scrap bin. They were throwing this out at one of the shops. I didn't even pay for that. I'm thankful that the local shop saves things like that for me. So there gives you an idea of the fabrics I use, but I've also been asked how I get the torn edges. So there's another piece that's just shown up. That's a bit of that netting. Where's a piece I can give you a sample with, a demo with? Let's see if I can. So I might start with, I don't like to tear them just for the sake of tearing. And try and find something that I know I'll use. That's a hard one, that'll be a good. Just trying to find something. Okay, I know, no, that's not it. I did have, there it is. Okay, so we'll start with this piece to start with. This is just a piece of cotton flannelette, and all I do is, if I can't tear it like that, which this one's, yeah, there we go. So I like to try and start it with my hands if I can, because I'll show you why. And I just tear it. So you'll notice this one's not too bad. You'll notice that it's all shifted in that direction, that the fabrics, the threads, the warp and the weft have all gone down. So I try and pull it back into line, and then I usually just press it with an iron to keep it nice and square. So there's one way I do it. If I just use a pair of scissors, this usually tears easily, this fabric. No, it's going to make a liar out of me. If I just use a pair of scissors to cut with, like so, you've got a very visible cut edge. And I don't like to have that, because when you tear your fabric, if I want to go and use this then in one of my works, hopefully you can see on this white background, sometimes it stands out like a pimple on a pumpkin that you've got this cut edge, and I try to avoid those cut edges. So what I do is I will get the piece of fabric that I want, and I stick my scissors in like so and pull them. So if I just pull it upwards, you still get a frayed effect. It doesn't look like I've just cut it with the scissors, and then I tear the rest of the way. So that's pretty much my secret as to how I get a nice frayed edge nearly every time. These pieces are tricky. These fabrics are harder to, some of them are very difficult. So there's a seam there, a folded over edge, so it's, when I get to things like this, it's not great for your scissors, so I'd recommend you use an old pair of scissors that it doesn't matter if you damage them. So I'm sort of sawing here because, again, I don't want a clearly cut edge. I want it all jagged and frayed. So this is where this becomes difficult. So what I do, it's very difficult to tear this fabric. So what I do is grab it with my thumb on both sides, and it gives me more leverage, and then I can, and then you get that lovely frayed edge, and you can't tell anywhere there that I've used scissors. And yes, it can get, I've got arthritis, it can get very taxing on your joints. It can become very painful, especially these harder ones when you're trying to tear them. I mean, I guess you could possibly get two pairs of pliers and use them. That would potentially work. I haven't tried it. I don't see why you couldn't try it. I'm always just, you know, if I'm starting to tear, I'm task focused and I'm wanting to get things done. So hopefully that's answered your questions about how I get that nice frayed edge on my fabrics and what kind of fabrics I use. So much for my quick little video. So thanks for joining me. I hope that helps, and I'll be back again sometime soon with hopefully some more helpful information.